Let's build a command line game using Python. I'm going to do this within the editor Visual Studio Code. To get started, I'm going to define a variable. The name of the variable is playing, and then to define it, I can add an equal sign, and the value of this variable is going to be true. We call this type of variable a Boolean variable. It takes the value of either true or false, and I'm going to incorporate it into a while loop, which will be the main structure of the game. So after the command while, I'm going to add parentheses and type playing, and then start the while loop with a colon. So what this means is while the game is being played, while we're playing the game, we're basically going to stay within this loop. And the first thing I want to do, the main thing for this tutorial, is to draw the game board. The game I'm interested in building is Mancala, which has a rectangular game board with 14 different bin locations. So to build the game, in the command line, I'm going to print 5 lines as the main game board. So the print command followed by parentheses, and then inside those parentheses, quotation marks. The rectangular game board is going to start with a plus sign in each corner, and then the different segments are going to be 4 dashes with a plus sign in between. I want 8 of these. So that's my first row. In the next line, another print command. This time, under each plus sign, I'm going to put a vertical bar with 4 spaces in between. So this is the upper half of the game board essentially. The middle line is going to be similar to the first, so let me just copy that. Except on each end, instead of plus signs and dashes, I want vertical bars with 4 spaces in between. So I'm just going to adjust that. And then finally, I'll repeat this second line again to create the bottom half of the game board, and then copy and paste the first line to end the game board. So if you're familiar with the game Mancala, on the rectangular board, each player controls 6 of the bins on their side, and play goes around the board counterclockwise, with the players picking up the stones available in a bin and then trying to drop them into their side of the bin. So the player that controls the lower side tries to collect stones on the right end, called the Mancala, and the player on the upper side of the bin tries to collect their stones in the left side, in their Mancala. If you're not familiar with this game, the rules will become clearer as we work through the code. Now, let me mention that all of these print commands are inside the while loop because of how they're tabbed. Something that would be outside of the while loop would start in line with that while command. And so let me just add a comment here at the end, and you can create a comment with a hashtag or pound sign. Let me just say end of the while loop to make it clear that that's where the while loop is ending. Now, with what we have so far, this playing variable is always going to be true, so the game will always be stuck inside this while loop. To create a way to break out of that, let me again tab over 1 space and define a new variable called user input. Again, the name is user input. The equal sign tells me that I'm defining that variable, and I'm going to define it with the input command. And then after the input command inside parentheses, I'm going to prompt the user to simply enter the letter Q to quit the game. Now I want to do something with that input. So I'm going to use an if statement to check to see if the user input variable is equal to the letter Q. Or I should say a string with the value of Q, a single character, lowercase q. So to do that, notice that I'm using a double equal sign because I'm testing to see what the value of user input is. I'm not defining the value of user input. So to get inside the if statement, I'm going to use a colon. So notice the symmetry here. To get inside the while loop, I end the while loop command with a colon. To get inside the if statement, I end the if statement command with a colon. And then the next line will be tabbed one in from where the if statement starts to be inside that if statement. So if this is true, I want the playing variable to be defined with a single equal sign as false. So let's see what we have so far. To test our code, I'm going to click on this green triangle up here to run the Python file. In Visual Studio Code, that opens up a terminal where we can enter commands, and we see our game board printed there pretty nicely. I can enter letters like A and B and C and nothing really happens. I can enter the word quit or a capital Q and we still stay within that while loop. But if I enter a lowercase q, we exit the game. Now the only thing that I notice is, the command prompt is really sort of smashed in with the game board. And so let's spread that out a little bit. I'm going to add one more print command with just an empty string. So just a quotation mark with nothing in between. So that's sometimes called the empty string. And now if we rerun the Python file, we see a little bit of a space in between the game board and the prompt for user input. Well, I'm looking forward to continuing the tutorial in a separate video. Just to summarize what we did in this video, we defined a Boolean variable and used that to control a while loop that printed the basic structure of our game board. We defined a user input variable and checked that with an if statement to create a way to exit the game.